Chronicles TV on air. We are now live in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. In the previous episode, we completed part 1 of the trial area. Today's episode, we're going to go into part 2 of the investigation area. If you had today's episode, make sure that like button support is greatly appreciated the channel. Oh, this room, it's been too long. It hasn't changed in the slightest, though. And it's been some 6 months, hasn't it? That's a long time for things to stay so familiar. I didn't know when you might return. I wanted everything to be as you left it. But it has been some 6 months. It's true. So, it's your father, alright, Susie? What happened? My father? Yes, Professor Mikotoba. I mean, it was half a year ago, but that's why you went back to Japan. It's a telegram you received saying he fallen ill with a very high fever for some unknown reason. That's right. So I was surprised to learn you'd be coming back so soon. Surprised but happy. I think I wrote about it in my letter to you, that it was all a trick. My father is fine in health, and I'm obviously very relieved about that. Well, we're all delighted to have you back. It was quite by the accident that I've been able to return to Europe, actually. It's because of a very grand conference called the International Forensic Science Okay. Whatever. It's the same thing that Lord Strong had said. Anyway, I've arrived safe and sound, and all that matters is that I'm here now. After all, I haven't fulfilled my promise to you, Iris. Oh. You must tell us everything that happened while you were back in Japan. Yes, of course, I shall. And there's one other thing. Something you wrote in your letter that particularly grabbed my attention. About you-know-who. About Kazuma. What? I know, I'll tell you all that I can. When I first arrived back in Japan, I really thought I'd never be allowed to return to Britain. But curiously, after that awful trial at the Supreme Court, Father's mood changed entirely. The awful trial? Oh yes. For the murder of Giselle Brett. Oh, you dressed as a man then, didn't you, Susie? Oh, well, yes. Since women are forbidden in the courtroom, I had no choice. Wow, amazing! I wish I'd seen it, don't you, Runo? Yeah, I suppose so. I want to play at being a lawyer now. I could wear a false mustache, maybe. I don't think any mustache could hide the fact that you're just 10 years old, Iris. There's something else I've been wanting to ask you, Miss Susato. It's about the real reason why Professor Mikotoba summoned you back to Japan. You said in your letter it was something to do with the convict's loot we found in Mr. Natsume's lodging? That's right. The very large dog collar we found with the bee emblem on it. It seems Mr. Natsume included a drawing of the collar in the report he submitted about his time in Britain. I understand that when Father saw the report, he turned as white as a sheet. Why would that be then? Father came to Britain himself, of course, to study. It was some time ago now, but he stayed for 6 years. I can only imagine that something must have happened during that time. But if he refuses to tell me what it was, then I intend to find the answers for myself. And I've decided that I, for one, won't keep any more secrets. Aw, Susie. That's a very meaningful look Susato's giving Iris there. Longstronger mentioned something about that thing too. I think he said that investigative authorities from 40 different countries would attend. Yes, and from Japan, my father and Judge Jikoku haven't been invited. It's something of an honor, I believe. Well, Professor Mikotoba is the leading expert in forensic medicine in our country after all. But who's the other person you mentioned? A judge, did you say? Yes, His Excellency Judge Seshiro Jikoku. You met him, Mr. Naruhodo? Last year in the Supreme Court? You can't possibly have forgotten. That terrible trial of yours when you were accused of murder? Yes, I try to think of that as a positive turning point in my life these days. Well, it was Judge Jikoku who presided over the trial. If I'm perfectly honest, I'd be happy never to see that man's face again in my life. Oh, well anyway, as father was invited to the thing, he agreed to me returning to Britain too. He won't actually arrive until next month, but, well, I couldn't wait. So I pleaded with him, and in the end he agreed to me going on ahead. Yes, about the thing. It seems as though Lord Strong has put in an awful lot of work to make it happen. It's obviously very important. I believe it is, yes. As I understand it, Lord Strongheart organized the entire event himself. I think he's hoping that by achieving exceptional results, he'll get the job of Attorney General, the most senior position in the British justice system. He's hoping to use his power to create the world's finest policing institution. That's what Father said anyway. Apparently, it's Lord Strongheart's lifelong ambition. Does Professor Migatoa know Lord Strongheart personally then, I wonder? Actually, Lord Strongheart gave me a long speech all about this very subject only yesterday. I sort of lost the will to live early on and didn't really listen to much of it. How trying for you. Giselle Brett, the woman whose unforgivable actions ended in me being wrongly accused of a crime I didn't commit. The murder of Dr. J.H. Wilson. Yes, Giselle Brett. That's a name I won't forget for as long as I live. The extraordinary thing is, though, it seems it's a name we should all forget. Sorry? Since the incident, our government's intelligence services have been investigating Miss Brett. But it turns out an Englishwoman by the name of Giselle Brett didn't actually exist. Didn't exist? But how can that be? It was a pseudonym. Her real name was Shin, and she wasn't a visiting student either. That was a front. A front? Who on earth was she then? Miss A. Shin. Mrs. Shin. Her name is literally all our intelligence service have been able to ascertain about her. Nobody knows why or how she came to be in Japan. It's a complete mystery. But that makes no sense. It's no easy task to be accepted as a foreign student anywhere. What could that have woman been up to? I'm afraid I really don't know. The only thing we can be sure of is that she had some business in our country that we don't understand. And now she's been killed, while all the questions surrounding her existence remain unanswered. I'm afraid so. A. Shin. Who on earth was she? And why do I feel as though I've heard that name before somewhere? I don't. After my friend Ray's trial, the reporter who actually killed Miss Brett said something very strange. I know the truth. I know you had in hand with what went on. It's in the visiting student's fate. Nobody here in Japan knows anything about it. They don't know the guy never made it to England. That he died on the steamship. And that he'll never... Obviously, I couldn't ask him to elaborate at the time. But later, I visited the man in his prison cell and asked him what he was going to say about Kazuma. And what did you learn? After he died on the voyage to Great Britain, his body should have been unladen at the port of Hong Kong and passed into the care of the consulate staff there. Should have been? Well, it turns out that his body never arrived. It's just disappeared. What? Kazuma's body vanished? Our government tried to cover the fact up, it seems. They erected a grave on the cliffs by our own town. Except, Kazuma isn't there. Did Professor Mikotoba know about this? Yes, it would seem that he did. But he didn't tell me. They're still investigating what happened to Kazuma's body as we speak. I just don't believe it. And what is this acute feeling of apprehension I have all of a sudden? Thinking back now, some of the things that happened on the SS Burya were definitely strange. I mean, after he died, we never saw his body again, did we? And y'all confirmed there was no pulse. Could it be? Could it be that he's actually still alive? Stop it, Mr. Naruto. It's too much to bear. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Just thinking about the possibility pains me so very much. Cast your mind back for a moment, Mr. Naruto. When Kazuma-sama was discovered, Mr. Sholmes was there, wasn't he? And if he definitely examined the body, I remember clearly. You're right. So if Kazuma hadn't actually been dead at all, it would mean that Mr. Sholmes had lied to us. And there's no reason why he would possibly have done such a thing. I suppose that's true, yes. The idea that he might still be alive somewhere. It wants to fill me with hope, but I can't let it. Because if it turned out not to be true, then I'd be back at the bottom of that awful pit of despair again. I'm terrified of what that might do to me. Oh, Miss Susato. I know she's given the idea the thought it deserves. It's Susato-san we're talking about after all. So I probably shouldn't push it now. You gonna tell us about the freaking Hounds of Basculin, whatever, the freaking script? That was the thing that you promised to ask. So you mean to tell me that the guy in question could be right here, be the one and only. That could be our dear friend right there. Hey, it's the same thing. French court here is fiery ball gown, the dance hall ablaze. You mean you're telling me our friend could be right there? Alright. It must be about a year ago now. I wrote a really long story based on some of my father's old notes. It's about one Hurley's greatest exploits. I call it the Hound. Okay, now we're getting to that topic. I want to know how the heck she knew. But then Mr. Jones forbade you from publishing it and put the manuscript somewhere nobody could get their hands on it. So nobody knows anything about it apart from Hurley and I. But for some reason, you knew the title of it, didn't you, Susie? Flashback! This is actually DLC, in a nutshell. And you wouldn't tell me how you come to know it. Yes, but I made you a promise that I would explain one day, didn't I? I think it's time. Oh! I'm only sorry I've had to keep it up from you for so long, Iris. It was like completely by accident that I came to know the title of your manuscript, Iris. It was a short while before we left Japan. I was cleaning Father's study and I saw something on his writing desk. A large box of papers. There was a label affixed to the box that was written in English. It read, "The Hound of Baskerville." What? My Baskerville story? Of course, I had no idea what it was at the time. My father came in and...
Susato, what are you doing?
Oh, Father.
Did you look at the papers?
No, I simply read the label, that's all.
Well, put it out of your mind.
Sorry?
Forget that you ever saw it, and certainly don't tell anybody else about this. Did you understand?
But what was Iris' manuscript doing in Japan? I have no idea. But when I heard Iris mention the word Baskerville that day, the title just slipped out. I would never have guessed that it was an unpublished account of one of Mr. Shone's exploits. When I returned to Japan, I asked Father to explain, but he refused to answer any of my questions, and there was no sign in the big box in his office. That's really all I know about it. I have no doubt that Father has very good reasons for being so secretive about it, but still, I made up my mind to explain myself to both of you. Well, thank you for being so honest, Susie. So, Mr. Naruhodo, I'm ready to start investigating if you are. I've committed every detail about the case to memory. And Iris has told me about the disturbing happenings at the Waxwork Museum as well. So, you're fully abreast of the situation already, Mr. Sato? I expect nothing less, to be honest. I would think our first port call should be investigate this Mr. Drebber, the engineer responsible for building the elaborate machine that was used to effect this extraordinary trick. He was a conjurer of sorts, by the sound of it, well known in the fields of science and magic. Then, we need to go and arrest him. Well, yes, he must know the truth behind this case, so I agree with you. Really do need to find that man. Sounds like it's a case of tracking someone down. Which is a job for the police, or a great detective.
Are we supposed to guess who she might be thinking of?
We don't have much time, so we need to get started straight away, I think. Good idea. Well, best of luck then. Oh, you're not coming today? I'm going to Brixton Road shortly for the herb market. But let me know how you got on, won't you? That was a little abrupt. The pull of the herb market must be strong. Before we get started, I want to do something real quick. If she gets a costume change, then we all should get a costume change, shall we? Shall we? What do we need to do? Back to title. I already saved the game anyway, so we do this. Oh, we're back in our office already. Special contents. I think it was, yeah, special contents. Taylor. Turn it on. Turn it on. Yo! Turn it on. Alright. Outfits are only available for use in Ace Attorney number 2. You should have told me that before? I was planning to use that for the number 1. Yo! Much better. Alrighty then. Next up. Where are we going? Where are we going? Do you know? I honestly thought I might never have the opportunity to return to Great Britain. And certainly not so soon. It's funny. For the past 6 months, I haven't been able to work in court. Meanwhile, you've been raising a storm in the Supreme Court of Justice, whatever, back in Japan. Please, Mr. Naruhodo, I may have been dressed as a man, but it was a very reserved performance. So, what's your father said in the letterbox about Ryutaro takedown is reserve? Well, anyway, I'm back here in this great capital now, and ready to assist you again, in any way I can. Thank you, Miss Susato. It's my pleasure, Mrs. Naruhodo. Alrighty then. Move. We may get something out of Hairbrain about his friend. Yo! What's with all the equations? What's he doing? Oh my, the whole wall of the cell is covered in mathematical equations. And he's still writing more now. Professor, sorry to interrupt. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo. And who is this young lady? My name is Susato Mikotoba. I'm Mr. Naruhodo's judicial assistant. It's a pleasure to meet you, Professor. Oh, if only I met a refined young woman like you sooner. None of this would have happened. No, that's not logical. That makes no sense at all. Oh dear, I'm sorry. If my presence here upsets you, I don't know why I stumbled right there. I owe you an apology too, Professor. I didn't manage to deliver what I promised you I would in court this morning. Oh, no. The whole thing, the whole miserable affair, it all happened because I have such a complete and utter clot. Professor Hairbrain? What have you been working on in your cell? Oh, you mean that? Oh dear, how embarrassing. I was suddenly struck by an idea, you see, and I simply had to write it down. The wall was all I had to hand. Oh, is it some new hypothesis? Something that surpassed super high voltage instantaneous kinesis, maybe? No, actually, this is my autobiography. Your autobiography. How I was diddled and fiddled by Albert Hairbrain. I found I can represent my odd fortunes with only odd numbers and ambitious set up some simultaneous equations. But no one's gonna understand that in the book. I'm going to have to pay back all the loans I took for the kinesis machine, you see? So it's going to be a new serial publication for next month. Part 1, an odd birth, an odd upbringing. You can't beat the man's optimism, that's for sure. I see. Well, now, would you mind if we talk a little more about the case? Oh, yes, of course. I've been working through the numbers. I was diddled, I was fiddled by the pair of them. By Asman and by the aloof engineer Drebber. We're not going to have to sit through an explanation of all these equations, are we?
Hello? I'm gonna say.
Even everything I believed in has been turned on its head. My research, Mr. Osmond, the kinesis machine, my hypothesis even.
I'm sorry it's come to this. There was really no other way.
No, it's not your fault. I wanted to protect my work, but in the end, there was nothing worth protecting. It was never my intention to deceive anyone. I didn't want to trick the public.
No, of course you didn't.
But in court this morning, I realized something.
Oh?
If you've done something wrong without knowing it, you've still done something wrong. Logically, it makes no difference if we were aware of it or not. Ignorance is poor excuse. The blame still lies with me.
Oh, Professor.
He believed in me this morning, you know. Burke did. He believed in my hypothesis.
Well, I think that was just a necessary factor in the prosecution establishing its case.
No, Burke wouldn't do something like that. I'm sure he genuinely believed it.
Did he?
I think I understand now. Why it was that he decided to take on the prosecution of my trial, I mean. After the terrible accident happened, nobody would believe in my hypothesis anymore. Not the police, not the prosecution service, not any lawyers even.
I feel like I dealt some kind of finishing blow there.
So if any other prosecutor had taken the case, if there was anyone other than Barack, I'm sure the prosecution would have declared my hypothesis a complete and utter nonsense.
And in that case, you would have been declared a fraud yourself, Professor.
Exactly, which would have been a fate worse than death for me. But Barack insisted that I was a proper man of science from start to finish.
You think that's why he...
I know him very well indeed. He's an extremely kind-hearted soul.
But that's extreme kind of hard soul. Spent all morning trying to paint you as a murderer, didn't he?
Well, admittedly, that part of the analysis appears to have some flaws in it.
And what about the whole Reaper side of things? How does that fit in with the kind-hearted soul idea?
Do you think he set out to trick me from the very start?
I'm sorry to say, that does seem likely, yes.
When I first met him, he introduced himself as a wealthy financier. He looked over the paper I had written and said my work would benefit all humanity and must be pursued. He was so enthused. He was so empathetic.
But in reality, he was the mastermind of some vast criminal network, it seems.
I still can't believe it.
As the machine was essentially a set decoration for some stage magic. It probably didn't require a large amount of investment actually. But the scale of it, it wasn't just some small trick. It was a very elaborate feat of deception.
All young scientists are full of hope about their burgeoning ideas, full of zeal. But none of us have any money. We want to do research, but we can't afford it. Many of us take care on barely legal part-time work to try to earn just a few measly pennies to carry on. To go through all that, only to be taken for a complete fool? It's too rotten to believe.
It is, I agree. And that's why we have to find those responsible and bring them to justice. Mr. Osmond is no more, of course, which leaves only the engineer.
Mr. Enoch Dreber.
Is he an engineer or a magician, or a swindler?
It was about a year ago when Mr. Osmond first brought Dreber to meet me at my laboratory. Since then, I met him many times to discuss details about the kinesis machine.
But at no point did you have any inkling that he was just an illusionist?
Oh, he definitely wasn't just an illusionist.
What do you mean?
He was a wealth of deep scientific knowledge. There's no question that this man's genuine scientist. It's instantly apparent in conversation.
I see.
But the wretched man deceived you, Professor. It's unforgivable. We must do something we can do to find him and bring him to justice. Are there no clues you can give us as to where his whereabouts? I'm sorry, we only ever discussed the kinesis machine, nothing else. Although, just once. I did visit his workshop.
What workshop?
Dreber's enormous fabrication laboratory, where he constructed my great machine.
Why? Why didn't you mention this before? In Notch Dreber's workshop. There's every chance we might find the man there. So you've been to Drebber's place of work then?
Yes, just once, you understand?
It was an enormous place, plenty of room to construct the kinesis machine, you see. Where can we find it? We have to go there at once. There's a good chance that we'll find Drebber there.
Well, yes, definitely. I'm sure you're not going to want to hear this. But I have absolutely no idea where the workshop is at all. I'm so sorry.
I was more than half expecting that.
You see, I was blindfolded in the carriage the entire way there.
He blindfolded you? He wasn't taking any chances then.
The place was incredible, the pinnacle of modern engineering. Even the oil he used was the very best, a special French machine oil that's impossible to obtain in Britain. Ah, the indescribable scent of the imported oil. Perfumers across the world should forget their secret formula and use that instead.
What do you think, Mr. Sato? The machine for your next birthday? I don't know what that he said, but something else.
I never use any kind of perfume, Mr. Naruhodo, and I'm not sure I'd like to start with that. I don't suppose you know even part of the workshop's address, Professor. You don't have a business card from Mr. Drebber, for example.
The man was clearly very cautious, Mr. Sato. I'm sure he would never have...
Aha! Yes, I do! He gave me his business card once. It's right here. Look.
What?
Let me see that.
Throw etiquette to the wind, why don't ya?
Enoch Drebber, engineer. I'm afraid that's all it says. There's no address.
No? Oh well, I can't say I'm surprised. Still, this could be useful. To the court record! Well, ain't that... It just says that. What's this? This dark smudge here.
I think perhaps it's a machine oil.
Yes, possibly. Professor Harebrain mentioned something about the oil Mr. Drebber uses, didn't he? He said it was specially important, very high quality oil that impossible to obtain in Britain.
Yes, that's right. But more importantly, it's more fragrant than the finest perfume. So excuse me in a moment. Oh, it doesn't appear to have a scent at all.
Don't worry. I expect that's just because there's just a tiny amount on here. Alrighty then. We could be back. Well, that will end the episode right here. Next episode, we're gonna go double check on the experimentation state, since we should have legal access to it, because now that thing is no longer in the act. And check on Sholmes. Like, comment, subscribe. Chronicles XTV, and I'm signing out.